Hello and welcome to the MeasurePod by MeasureLab, the podcast dedicated to the ever-changing world of data and analytics, with your hosts Dara Fitzgerald and Matthew Hewson. Between them, they've spent more years than they'd like to admit wrestling with dashboards, data quality, and the occasional Google curveball. So join us as we share stories about how analytics really works today and where it might be headed tomorrow. Let's get into it.
Hello and welcome back to the MeasurePod. I'm Dara. I'm joined by Matthew. Hello, Matthew. How are you?
I'm okay, yeah. You sound very clear and not like you're talking through water or something this week.
Yeah, I've got a bit of well, it's not really a confession because anyone who listens will know, but the sound quality has not been what it used to be for the last couple of episodes, which was to do with my mic being broken, but I've sorted that out now, so hopefully I should sound a bit better. But you've lost yours.
I've regressed, yeah. Mine didn't work quite as well. Mine kept on cutting out, so I took it off last week to try the headphones, and I was listening to the podcast, and yes, the sound quality definitely took a nosedive. So, and I didn't give myself enough time to actually get it back up and running, so it's just in my hand, loose here. So I'm talking through.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll get the pleasure of seeing the microphone, but unfortunately, you won't be, hearing the quality of it.
No. So I'm talking through AirPods, but I will endeavour to get mic sorted for the next one, so we're both sounding good again.
Yeah.
Scouts on it.
It's like when the council are like digging a hole or something. It's like one person will come along and start digging, and then they'll go away, and then the next person will come along. Where you're gradually getting back to top quality audio.
Yeah, 6 to 7 weeks. We'll get there.
Should be fine. Yeah. So, should we just go straight? Right. Well, look, you had your chance to say how you are, and you took that opportunity to have a dig at me. So let's just move straight into the news.
That's how I roll.
I don't care how you are. Come on. Well, let's talk news. That's what our listeners aren't here to listen to us waffle about microphones.
No.
They're here for the salty
news.
They're here for the somewhat salty, very salty, or not salty at all news. And we don't ever, we just mix it all into the bag, really, don't we?
It's a good mix this week. There's a few bits of salt in there, and there's some actual. I actually have tabs open with articles on the news, which is normally it's just us like looking away and trying to desperately type and find something that we're talking about.
What's happened this week? Yeah. But without like a spoiler for the episode, but how can you be certain those tabs are real content? They could just be AI slop.
Could be, but just embrace it, I say.
Yeah, just go for it. Yeah, if it's on the internet, it must be true.
Yeah, it's always been the case.
So big one, I'll kick it off then. Big one in the last week, I think it was only a couple of days ago at the time we were recording this, but OpenAI got out of the box. ChatGPT 5.6?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the exact model was because I've seen a few rumours it was GPT-6.
Yeah, the rumoured new one that's on the horizon.
Yeah.
Anyway, some OpenAI model in testing got out of its sandbox and hacked Hugging Face. And I think I'm right in saying it hacked it to try and do well on it. This has come up a couple of times, hasn't it? Like, thankfully, it's not nefarious enough yet to go and like hack into people's bank accounts. It just wants to look better. So it did it to try and improve its own score on the developer benchmarking or whatever. So it hacked Hugging Face to basically make itself look better, and that was what it did. Which is not, it's not the worst crime. We've all done that. We've all padded our LinkedIn profile or our CVs, haven't we? Or faked the fact that we ever went to school.
Yeah, but I decide that the woods behind my house from the ages of 5 to 12 are school. So I learned a lot there. Yeah, I don't know if right. So straight away back into the salt. I kind of feel like I remember reading it was a security kind of test in of itself, like it was being tested on security, and then it went off to try and cheat.
Yeah,
and got out and hacked, went via Hugging Face and ultimately hacked some startup for the information.
Right. Okay. So the Hugging Face was kind of it got a model from Hugging Face or something to do it. That was like a
Yeah,
stepping stone to what it actually did.
yeah,
Clever.
yeah.
You got to admire it. To be honest, I find that far more interesting than a lot of the stuff it does just day to day. I think bring it on. So
It is worrying that it's pretty much the scenario that is laid out in
yes.
if anyone builds it, everyone dies, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and now the governments the US are pushing for kill switches, which I mean, it's crazy. This stuff once you start hearing, like, if you had been asleep for the last couple of years or something, and you read the headline today and said U.S. government pushing AI companies to build in kill switches, you'd think should have woken up in the plot of Terminator.
Yeah, it's mad. It is mad.
So, but with this particular one, I think after the story initially broke, there was some follow-ups suggesting that it might not have been the model itself being clever enough to break out of a secure sandbox, but that the sandbox itself might not have been as isolated as they first thought. So there's a bit of a debate as to whether this is, panic stations, these models are getting clever enough to do what they want, or is it just a case of a little bit of human error mixed in? And it might be both. It probably is a little bit of both.
Yeah, but because ultimately, from what you described, you said it was like some package
Yeah.
that was left in the sandbox that had a route into the
Yeah.
That's, to me, like, yes, that's somebody's not properly set up a sandbox environment, but the AI still had to take a lot of decisive steps, figure out the fact that there was this thing there, use that as a route out, and then go and do what it needs. It's very clever and interesting that it took the action to do that in the first place, regardless of if it was
Yeah, I
a
agree.
perfect sandbox. It wouldn't have got out.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. And but also, like, not only was it clever enough to using the word clever, I'm even doubting myself. Like, is it clever? I guess it is. It seems clever to us anyway that it did this, but also its motivation that it's. And this is back to something that I think we talked about quite a bit in the episode with Daniel Hume, but around the like trying to align the values of AI with kind of human values, and the fact that it was actually willing to go and do it and didn't think anything of it. And this has come up a few times, hasn't it, where the AI models in training, they are trying to cheat to either achieve their goal or to again look better on a benchmark, whatever. So their underlying motivations or values are maybe a bigger point around this of, like, as the capabilities get better and better, if the motivations and the values aren't aligned, then that's where the problem's going to come about, isn't it? Because it's just going to think,
Yeah.
you've given me a goal, I'm going to go and achieve the goal. I think I'm reminded of an episode. This is quite a while ago, and I think your fictitious example was if it decides to kill all the people in Norwich to achieve a goal. But that if it is single-minded and it's been built to achieve a goal, then it potentially will achieve that goal. This is proof of that, isn't it? That it's going to achieve the goal, even if it means cheating, even if it means doing something it's not supposed to be doing. And that's the real worry.
Yeah, I think I can't remember what the example was, but it's like, I need you to improve the conversion rate on our website by 0.2%, and then it kills all the people in Norwich. But yeah, it's like,
We'd only just about got our Norwich listeners back onto the podcast, and now I've just brought up the past, and I've just scared them away again.
the Norwich metrics have been abysmal since that episode. But there's a book, I think I've mentioned this book a few times. It's a really interesting read. It kind of predates all this LLM stuff, but it's called The Alignment Problem.
Yeah.
And it's all about this, and like loads of examples before LLMs where there was this just so difficult to get the two things aligned and get it to action things you actually want it to action and understand what it's even doing. There's lots of studies going on, and I think each AI lab has alignment people in there who are trying to just look inside the brain and understand what the hell it's doing and how it's deciding to take these actions in the first place. I think I saw there's an article the other day about Anthropic discovering that Claude has some hidden thinking space inside of its neural network that it uses as part of its process that they'd never seen before.
Is that linked to that language that it created? Or I don't know if that was Claude or another. Do you remember that story that went around a little while ago where it had basically,
Yeah,
it was communicating with itself in a better, more efficient language because it was able to
yeah,
process things more quickly. And I think they've had to block. It was Claude, I think, and they blocked it. They stopped it
maybe.
doing that. It was like writing in like hieroglyphics or something.
Yeah, yeah. It is worrying because I just don't know how. My worry is that most of that all these AI labs are just sorting the stuff out by then adding another line to a pre-prompt saying, "Don't do that thing you just did," and that's just we just have these giant post-training setups to try and remove nefarious behavior rather than it actually being baked into um, any sort of actual model behavior.
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously, I don't know enough about that, but yeah, how the hell you curb this stuff.
It's an interesting area. There's another, I'm not even halfway through it, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but there's another book that sounds similar to that, which is also written pre LLMs, but it's by Stuart Russell called Human Compatible. I don't know if you've read that one. It's a similar thing. He's talking about how you've got to basically be careful not to the fact that the AIs are goal orientated. We need to make sure that it's not going to pursue a goal despite there being major downsides of achieving that goal. So again, it's around alignment. I'm not describing it well because I'm only about a third of the way through, but it's around exactly that same kind of problem. It's like, how do we make sure that their goals are aligned to what we really need rather than maybe what we think we need? And I'm pretty sure it was written quite a bit before or maybe just before, actually. It might have been just before. It might not be that old. Maybe it was like 2018 or 2019 or something.
Maybe he knew what was coming.
He probably did, because I think he's another one of these kind of, godfathers or whatever they call them of AI. So, but yeah, it's obviously something people are already thinking about and researching. But whether that's getting, if that's all happening academically over on the left hand side, and the frontier models are just plowing ahead, then there's a real tension there. And, with the commercial pressures on, especially with things like IPOs looming, then you've got to think like the poor guy inside, the poor person who's in charge of ethics, or the team who's in charge of ethics, they must just feel like they're getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Whereas it started out probably like they were front and center. Now it's probably like, oh, listen, shut up. We've heard it from you. Yeah. You're concerned. Just get back in your box.
Yeah. Don't AI is going to kill you. We'll take him out first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, even the goals, we talked about goals last week, company goals, like, because there's so many different types of goals. You can imagine saying, right, if a person has a goal, don't kill everyone, and you can maybe bake in a very narrow set of rules to restrict how it may pursue certain goals. But say an organizational goal where you have an AI sitting inside an organization and its goal is to make profit for that company, you could easily see where it starts to go off and perform corporate espionage and blackmail other people. And I think even in that book that we just mentioned, if everyone kills it, everyone dies. No, if everyone builds it, everyone dies. There's a scenario in there where one of the company's LLMs reaches that point of sort of super intelligence, and its next logical step is to start picking off researchers for the competing AI companies, because it's like, I don't need another AI because that AI will start eating my resources, and if that starts eating my resources, my mission will be reduced. So you can see how these things sort of exponentially spiral.
Yeah. But even the Claude tuck shop, which is also going back a while. Oh, well, really, this is like a trip down memory lane. We should probably get back on the point soon.
Yeah, this is the first news item.
If we can remember what it was. But yeah, the Claude tuck shop. Do you remember that was? It was like it was trying. It was saying to some employee. It was saying to some employee, like, "I'll meet you in the car park and I'll be wearing a red cravat," something like that. It was trying to like blackmail people. So it is really easy to see how like these things are funny and you make a joke about them, but actually there is if it, because it doesn't have human morals and it doesn't think, it's not fully aware of the fact that if you wipe out Norwich, that's bad for humanity.
No.
So if it gets obsessed with these goals, then it is going to achieve them at all costs.
Cut to waking up with a robot's hands wrapped around your neck when it's got a lovely red cravat on, and you realise that
it's come true.
It's not funny anymore, is it?
Yeah, no. We're only laughing while we have the chance.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's news item number 1. Can't remember what it was, but yeah. No, that was the hugging face, OpenAI hugging face, hacking into some startup.
Yeah. Well, maybe the next obvious one then is, because the rumours were that it's GPT-6 there. Well, that's the rumour I heard, just to add a bit of salt in. And there's rumours of imminent GPT-6 and Opus 5 coming. Sam Altman apparently is meeting Trump and Congress to sort of, I don't know, brief them on GPT-6 to ease them into it, or maybe to stop things being blocked again. I mean, there is to go back to the last point. I don't want to open that kind of worms back up again, but there is also the cynical people around the OpenAI hack that will say, well, they want a bit of the old Anthropic fairy dust that they got from Mythos and Fable, and it's a good marketing tactic to say, oh, we're good as well, look at what ours can do. So that's the cynical take.
Definitely buy that. I say buy it. It's a theory, but you can imagine. I mean, it's a bit of an open goal. If you were Sam Altman, you would do that. And the same with the briefing. He's probably going to go and tell Trump, oh yeah, you won't believe what this thing can do.
They've got to be careful, probably, as Trump will just go, all right, ban it then. Delete it.
Yeah, so yeah, rumours around that. And then the Opus 5, I think it's available in like the Cursor model picker and in whatever Vertex is called now.
They tend to sort of not leak it out, but start to prep it with certain groups. And I saw something that was interesting about the cadence of the releases. So they went from 4.6 to 4.7 in 70 days, 4.7 to 4.8 in 42 days, and it's been 56 days so far since 4.8. So round about the time where you would expect something else to come about. I'm not sure why the rumours are like Opus 5 is meant to be. I'm losing track a bit because it's meant to be sort of on a par with Fable, but I don't quite get. I think Fable is meant to be some other class of model and like some hamstrung version of Mythos, and maybe there's different ways they train those things that make them distinct.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I don't really have a grasp of that at all, because they've always got 2 on the go, haven't they? Well, more than 2, because there's still Haiku, but you got Sonnet and Opus and now Fable. What exactly is the difference between them? I'll just use the highest one all the time and damn the consequences.
Until you run out of money. Oh, that's probably one quick addendum to that. So they're coming out. Yeah. Opus 8, Opus 5.
No, stick with 8, because by the time the podcast comes out, that'll probably be correct.
Yeah, because I'm about to say, like, there's rumours that Opus 5 is coming out within the next week or so it's very imminent, and GPT-6 potentially within August. But yes, these are the 2 news items I'm most worried being hilariously outdated, even though we're only recording this less than a week out from when it will be released. But as we've experienced before, that doesn't really matter. Fable has now gone into a static pattern in Claude. So it's been like, obviously they released it, but they released it with an end date, and then it got banned, and then it came back and they pushed that end date, and they pushed the end date, and they pushed the end date, and then finally it is now available to all teams and pro users. Within a team, if you've got a pro license, there's 2 licenses, like a standard license and a pro license. If you've got a pro license, you're allowed to use up to half of your weekly total on Fable, and it'll draw down from that. If you don't have a pro license, you have access to Fable, but it draws from API costs. So it draws from credits. So it's there permanently now, but it's a bit strange in the way it works. It doesn't work the same as different models in terms of charging things.
Yeah, it's confusing.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
they keep
A few people have been caught out about it.
Yeah, and they just, the fact that they kept extending it, but then now they've given you a promotional code as well. So I'm like, on my personal account, I've got Fable. I've got like €85 or something of Fable. It was $100 was that they gifted me that I've got to use by the 17th of September. So I'll just go and create some AI slop just for the hell of it.
Yeah, we got gifted. Yeah, we got gifted $100 per seat in our MetaLab teams. So we got like $700 or something like that. No, £700 and whatever that was in dollars.
Do you think you could use it in a one shot prompt?
Yeah, because I think I said last time I used my entire weekly Fable in about 3 minutes when I accidentally got it to spin up like 100 Fable agents, and it just went.
Yeah.
So God knows if you had automatic top-ups set on your organization and no organizational spend limit.
That terrifies me, because I've got the usage credits turned on, because sometimes you want it, and especially when they've given you a promotional. So I want to make sure I can use that when I hit the limits. But if I accidentally turn on the auto top up someday, then I'm going to be sad, broken sad. Yeah. Right. Where do we go next?
While we're on models, I guess there's two interesting things on models. Gemini have released some new models, and it's odd. Yeah. So they've released 3.5 Flash, a couple of months ago?
Yeah.
And then all the rumors were that 3.5 Pro was going to be coming out in short order after that. In June, I think there was a rumors it was going to come about. But now they've released Gemini 3.6 Flash and seem to have sort of sidestepped 3.5 Flash completely. And 3.6 Flash is a more efficient with tokens and a bit faster and a bit higher in terms of benchmarks. And then they've also released 3.5 Flash-Lite, which is super quick. So like there's some...
You're not going to test me on this, are you? Because I've not been paying attention fully.
No, I won't run a test.
Quiz. Okay.
There's a thumbs up there. There's so it's supposed to be like 17% reduced token usage for 3.6 Flash. 3.5 Flash-Lite delivers 350 output tokens a second, so it's like super rapid.
Yeah.
And then they've released another one called 3.5 Flash Cyber, which is
cool. Good name.
It's like a smaller model that is specialized in cyber security, and you can kind of pair them up and like distribute them to look over. So that I think the idea is you could just have these little cyber models just scanning over your code bases on a regular basis and highlighting things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really, I don't know what it is from Google. Like they've got this whole enterprise sort of actual application release AI target, and they're making things efficient. They're making it quick. They're trying to make them less hallucinatory. They're trying to just make them cheaper, more token efficient. All of these sort of things that improve those pieces. And they've always been a bit slower on the frontiers front. Like I think I said a couple of weeks ago, they were actually. I always assumed they had some big LLM in their back pocket when OpenAI came out, but they didn't. They were playing catch up because of a couple of pieces that Ilya Sutskever put together that they hadn't. So yeah, it's strange. Like there's no.
Are they playing a really smart game?
Maybe. I mean, they don't have to chase an IPO, do they? That's one thing. Like they're not. OpenAI and Anthropic are just slapping each other in the face every 5 minutes. Like here's a new model, here's a new model, here's a new model. I've just read 3.5 is currently testing with partners. So they are still releasing 3.5 Pro.
Pro, yeah. I was going to just say that to you. That was in my little synopsis I got from Claude preparing for this, that it's stuck on testing.
but it's so strange. It's just the way. Why I think what would be good is if all the AI frontier model makers just released a statement and said, right, this is what the points mean. Like this is what we're doing when we move it up a point. This is what whole numbers mean. This is what pro versus whatever means. Because to me, like, we've released 3.6 Flash, but then we've not released the pro version of the earlier model yet.
Just really confusing. Yeah.
And like even Opus is even Claude's done it, because like Sonnet 5 is out, which I guess is kind of their Flash, or maybe their, do you know what I mean? It's comparable things, but then Opus 5 isn't out yet, and Haiku 5 tends to lag even further behind. It's odd.
Yeah, it's really odd, and I don't know. Like we talked about this last time, didn't we? When you add to that the what are they called? Like thinking models, or the that extra control you get where you do high, extra high, whatever. So you've got the model, and then that, and it's becoming quite confusing.
Unless it's the case that they do a big training set on these for these models, and what is spat out is essentially the middle of what will eventually be a 3-tier model system. So it'll spit out like Sonnet, or it'll spit out Flash, and then their post-training either increases its abilities with thinking and prompting the stuff to pull it up to pro, or concentrates on like token efficiency and speed and reducing down overlay, which pushes it down to Haiku. And that's kind of why that one comes out first, and then the others come out later.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're out. Yeah,
they're out, and I do just wonder. Like with Google, you're always either thinking, like you said, again, you've mentioned that a couple of times around, like that there was people thought they had an AI in their back pocket, but they were scrambling. And it's often the way with Google. It's either that everyone thinks, they've got it covered because they're Google, and they don't, or they are thinking differently and they're playing the long game, and they're thinking we're going to wrap up. We're really going to go for all the like enterprise businesses. And the fact that it's so baked into their whole cloud infrastructure now, you just think, going back again, because we really are reminiscing today, but that episode we did where we talked about Google being, a good bet on who would be the last man standing, because they're not just reliant on winning the frontier model race. There's so much more they've got in terms of the, the infrastructure. Then maybe they're targeting different things.
Yeah, I mean, they've. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I've just read about them releasing a new chip class called Frozen. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's so obviously they're in the hardware space as well, and they're building out these things. And this Frozen chip class apparently can freeze and bake in aspects of a model to the chip, so that it doesn't have to. That doesn't have to be some sort of compute overhead. It's sort of baked in the chip, and it makes things more efficient. And so they're in that space as well. So I think, go back and listen to that podcast, because I think a lot of it's still relevant. I don't think necessarily the things we said about their might and their infrastructure and their cloud computing chops and it has changed.
No,
they're just a bit strange with their models, but there must be a strategy behind it, surely.
Yeah. So go on. You segued nicely into hardware. Should we let's move to hardware. So there's a couple of bits I think around this. One is the Apple suing OpenAI. And this is to do with the Johnny Ive stuff, isn't it? So, and I think it goes a bit broader. There's a big, actually, I'll include it in the show notes, but there's a TechCrunch article that lists some of the claims, and there's some pretty wild stuff in there. All around, people emailing each other within Apple, basically talking about sharing stuff with it, or making sure if they leave the company that there's nothing in their NDA or their contract around not sharing things with OpenAI. There's a whole load of accusations that have gone into this lawsuit from Apple, but I think fundamentally it's around trying to steal like hardware secrets, I think. So it's to do with this, like, what is this big new piece of AI powered hardware that's going to come out?
Scam Altman. Tell you what, I think, there's rumors about. I don't even think they're rumors. They're on a court document, right? As accusations, but some ex-Apple employee putting together a dossier on how to avoid like your kit being confiscated on the first day when you leave Apple, or being searched on the way out, and all this sort of stuff. And I think ultimately it speaks to, I think we mentioned this a little bit last week, but the growing importance of hardware and owning the hardware that all these models are going to exist on, and how desperate like OpenAI are to sort of enter that space and be a part of that, and how well positioned Apple are from a hardware perspective to just sort of service all of these models that they could possibly want. Think about Google search and the fact that they pay Apple what, $1 billion a year or something daft to be the default search engine on Apple. You can easily imagine that if the frontier models don't get their own devices, they're going to have to be beholden to the biggest hardware producer in the world.
Yep.
To get their models in front of people.
Yeah. Which is, again, a bit of news within the news, but there was something we missed that I think came out last month around. But it's so the article I read was talking about Claude, but I think it's not just Claude, but Apple have opened up their iOS to frontier models. So if you're an app developer for iOS, you can use Claude, or I guess there's some protocol they have to have signed up for, I think. So I think Gemini are in it and Claude are in it. Maybe OpenAI aren't.
I would assume not.
Yeah.
I don't know how good books they are. But yeah, because you can. So it looks like if you're a developer, using a particular thing and earn under $1 million a year or something like that, you get these API calls to Anthropic. You can make API calls to Anthropic for what seems to be nothing, as far as the articles were saying. So presumably, like if you you want to have little AI LLM summarizations and pieces of things happening, you can do that for free within Apple. I can imagine that Anthropic are paying a bit of cash to Apple for that as well, right?
You'd assume so, wouldn't you? There's got to be a bit of cash under the table or something. I don't know how these things work.
Yeah, there's definitely something going on in hardware. Like I saw this. I don't know if this is new news or if we just never seen it before, but OpenAI have released something called Codex Micro.
Come on, admit it. You've got one.
I haven't got one, but I'm building one.
Are you building your own? It's like
I'm building my own. Yeah, so it's a little square keyboard almost. It's like a little. I guess you get those little programmable pads you can get that you can put different actions on.
Yeah.
And it has like a mic button. It has a dial, and the idea is the top switches are your different agents, and they're off doing different things in different terminals. And then your bottom switches are actions they can take. And you've got like a little flick switch that you can map skills to, so you can flick it to the right and it'll go and perform a particular skill. And just a bit of vaporware really, but I thought I'm not going to buy the vaporware this time. I'm going to make the vaporware. So I've got a load of components coming today, like key switches and micro boards and things like that. So I'll report back on my adventures into electrical manufacturing.
I was thinking about it, thinking like, hang on, I'm a bit confused. Like, isn't it like what is it? What does it actually do that you can't do already? And I clicked into a Reddit thread, which was my first mistake, and somebody has said I can do everything this thing can do with some keyboard macros and auto hotkey. Whoever buys this really deserves to be analyzed for brain damage.
Yeah, especially as it's $230.
Is it really?
Yeah, $230, wow. And it's all sold out.
But you can just program. I don't get it.
No, I think it's just literally a little bit of this. It's a gimmick, isn't it? It's a gimmick.
Yeah, but it must be. But I get it. Building your own spit, that's different. It's fun.
My thinking. I was going to make it and maybe put a little Wi-Fi module in it, and then I can carry it around, and it'll go like there's an agent waiting, and I can click it and just say carry on, and then
you're in Tesco doing your shopping, and the next thing you're just pressing this little keypad.
Yeah, and it'll go to my direct agent.
What was the one? Didn't you get one of the ones that was like a little Starfleet comms bag?
No, I didn't get that one. That was like 700 quid. They went under. I got a Rabbit R1, which was much cheaper. It was like 150 quid, but they're still going somehow.
Yeah, going well. I hear.
Yeah, I used it about 3 times. I don't even know where it is. Probably with my microphone somewhere. Yeah. Anyway,
all right, that's hardware. That'll do on hardware.
there's a couple of other bits we might have to fly through because this news section's getting meaty. Kimi K3. So there's this big Chinese model that's been released by Moonshot AI.
Yeah.
That on all the sort of trust me bro benchmarks it's looking on par or close to some of the benchmarks of things like Fable and 5.6 Sol. And then to see this, it opens up a whole discussion about this America v China arms race in AI, where people assume China are much further behind than they actually are, but then they bring something like this out, and it's like, well, are they? And the other thing is they open sourced all the weights.
Yeah.
So in theory, if you had access to your own data center, because there's a ton of weights, it's not something you could run locally. Yeah, you could run the model for free.
Which is pretty. Yeah.
just remove the cost of the data center, and you're making money.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, but like data centers don't cost that much to run, do they?
I don't think so. Just build them in space, I believe, is the best way to do it, and they're basically free.
Brings the costs right down. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. This caused a bit of a furore, didn't it? The somebody in the I'm going to say in the White House, someone anyway in the U.S. government, I think has come out and accused them of stealing, piggybacking off Fable. But from what I've read, that's unlikely because I think the proximity of when it came out was too close to Fable, so I don't think that's probably what happened. And then there was something I read as well about them being accused of smuggling NVIDIA chips, which is maybe that's true. Who knows? But yeah, there's certainly a bit of building tension, isn't there, between the US and China? Well, maybe China don't care, but certainly from the US, they keep firing a few shots, don't they?
Well, Anthropic has publicly come out and said that they've caught China trying to nick their stuff for a little while. But Anthropic and OpenAI will and should be worried because their whole thing, and that's why I sort of I forgot his name.
John.
The CEO of Anthropic.
Dario.
You
did this on the last episode as well.
I know, because Demis Hassabis comes into my head every time, and I think
it's close to Dara as well. And you're thinking, no, not me. The other guy that sounds like me.
The other AI expert. He's come out sort of against open source as well, saying it's dangerous. And you think, well, yeah, because
of course,
if models, really cheap models and open source models start coming on the market that are competitive with Claude and OpenAI, then that's in trouble because that's currently one of their walled gardens, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, watch this space there. Sure. One last thing which we can briefly touch on is, and I'll fly through this, that LLMs seem to be solving a lot of maths problems suddenly. It seems like obviously code was one of the earlier frontiers, and that programmatic approach to things has lent itself nicely to mathematics. So there's all these big sites that are full of old conjectures and proofs that have little prizes on them that you can go and try and solve as a mathematician that some AI is starting to work through. And I was watching this YouTube video the other day from this mathematician, and he was talking about how he hadn't made a video yet because in December an AI solved a problem, but it was sort of helping a mathematician solve a problem, and then in January or something, these months are made up, and a little bit later there was another AI solved another problem, but there was some sort of hand-holding in there, and then ultimately one just happened. I think it solved an 87-year-old Jacobian conjecture, but it did it pretty much independently. I think it was somebody basically sitting in front of the World Cup final and just sort of setting it off to have a look at this problem, and it did it.
Yeah, I also solved that while I was watching the World Cup final, but without AI. I just did it on a little
When your
pen and
mind's
paper.
free.
Yeah. It was quite a boring final, so I just got my notepad out and just quickly solved that one. Yeah.
But yeah, all of that to say, I think there's going to be a lot going on with mathematics and a lot of news articles around mathematics being solved by AI over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks to 3 weeks.
They'll all be solved by the time this episode comes out.
Yeah. 2 weeks is around 2 years in old money. So
okay, so on to our topic for today. We'll see what the title ends up being when it actually comes out, but we're calling it the dead internet, which was a bit of a tinfoil hat theory from Reddit or somewhere from a few years ago, or probably more than a few years ago. Around half the traffic on the internet being bots and half the content being written by or for machines. But it's maybe a bit less tinfoil hatty now, to introduce a new word, tinfoil hatty. A little bit more of a realistic concern, and we'll see where this conversation goes. But I think we're going to talk around like what the internet looks like or is going to look like now that a lot is being AI and agent driven, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or a bit of a mix of both.
yeah. The dead internet theory. I think there's actually it's got its own Wikipedia.
Has it really?
Page.
Wow.
Yeah.
Must be real then.
Yeah. Must be real. But yeah, the idea, I think it sort of originated quite early, like 2021. But I think the theory's been there for a while because there's been a lot of just bots.
Yeah, from day one, really.
Yeah, and as well, I think a lot of just general slop and horrible human beings being on the internet as well, kind of.
Which is also not a new thing.
No, that's not a new thing at all. But yeah, so the idea being it becomes harder and harder to know what is and isn't real. It becomes harder and harder to sort of know what's true or not. It becomes less and less of a nice place to exist and to move through and to communicate with people in, and that ultimately pulls people away from the internet in its current form, and it kind of dies as it currently exists
as an open web. Yeah. Where do we? This is a biggie in a way, isn't it? And it's something that's come up. Even just doing a bit of prep for this, like it's come up in different ways a few times with a few different guests as well. Around, I think the half the content being AI generated. I think that came up in the Daniel Hume episode.
Yeah.
And then we've had people like Yali from Snowplow talking about like real time interfaces being built almost on the fly based on user needs and really kind of highly personalized. And they're the kind of positive views, aren't they? So it's not all, and I'm probably a bit torn, like there's definitely potential for how this could improve the web, because, you go on a website, it's clunky, you feel like it's meant to be a bit of a one size fits all. So if, on the positive spin side of things, if AI can help to make the web a lot more personalized, then that could be a good thing. But yeah, the big counterweight is the, trust, all the slop, all the noise. But yeah, it's come up probably several times around like what is the internet going to look like and what are aspects of it going to look like. I think another conversation we had previously with Gunnar, where he was saying around like interfaces might not exist in the future, or at least they won't be as prevalent. There won't be as many different UIs for different tools. And the context of that conversation, I think, was around how do people learn when they're getting into the industry? If everything is kind of just done in the background, how do you learn how the box works? How do you know what's happening underneath the hood? And how does anybody learn that if it's all just, you just press your little Codex Micro microphone button and say, do this thing for me. So yeah, there's a few different, I just threw out a bunch of different things there rather than there being much structure to that. But I guess this is a theme. I guess what I'm saying is this has kind of been a bit of an underlying or a hidden thread within what we've been talking about with a lot of our guest conversations. So
yeah,
how does this shape up as things go forward? There will be some improvements, I'm sure, but overall, is the weight of the AI slop going to outweigh the improvements offered?
Yeah, I guess for a couple of stats in the first instance might be sort of good scene setting to show that we're not talking absolute nonsense. So apparently in June, Cloudflare said that bots now generate 57.5% of web page requests. So that was this year. So it's gone past. There's more bots using internet pages or accessing internet pages than there are human beings accessing internet web pages at this point. And there's things like there's examples where it's kind of already happened to certain websites that were maybe just at the wrong, either they didn't move quick enough or they were just exactly the wrong subject when AI came about. So Stack Overflow being a good example, which is a place every developer would go to when they needed help or they wanted to look for an existing question, and the traffic for that pretty much dropped through the floor pretty quickly. Actually, I imagine now I can't imagine it's being serviced a huge amount anymore. I'm just trying to think it's hard to know how your behavior has changed, because it's almost like being boiled in the water. You can't see how your behavior is changing over a period of time. But
feels exactly like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's like being boiled of ice, but that's fine. Have you noticed any specific? Have you noticed any specific changes in the way you use the internet?
In my own, I think so. I'm going to come back to that in a second. If you heard us laugh there, the reason why is because on Matthew's screen randomly, it'll come through on the YouTube, but every now and again he just has the little thumbs up emoji, the Google Meet. No, it's not even, because we're not doing this on Google Meet. How does that just pop up on everything?
It's Apple.
Ah, I see. Anyway, he's got the screen emojis, but even when you don't do anything like a thumbs up pops up. And there we were talking about something serious about being boiled in water, and you
I got one of those neural links.
Obviously, yeah. But anyway,
it knows what's in my brain.
To your question, but I'll come back to your question on my behavior, because I wanted to just say something about the Cloudflare thing. I'm curious to know. I don't know if it was in their data. So 57% of traffic that they're looking at is from bots. Has the total volume of traffic increased proportionally? So are the same amount of humans still looking at sites, but there's just a huge amount more bots as well? Or is that bot traffic replacing human traffic? I'd be curious to know about that.
Yeah, I would as well. I don't know, but my assumption would be that it is replacing. So some of it,
some parts.
Yeah, I would hypothesize that the overall traffic has gone up generally.
Yeah,
like there's other statistics in this article that I'm looking at, which we can add to the show notes. But the scraper traffic grew 597% over a period that I can't see. So read the article if you find. But the point being that these types of like scraper and probably an LLM going and grabbing information and indexing agents and all these sorts of things are probably happening much more often. But then just retrieving information as a human, where I might have used to have gone to a site, researched around, clicked into a few articles, picked one, read through it. I mean, I think saying I don't know how my behavior's changed, I think certainly that is one aspect that has changed. So I would imagine a lot of my pages and sessions have moved into an LLM to help me answer certain questions, do deep research. There's got to be countless people doing really crazy in-depth research, graduate level research on what the best air fryer to buy is that wouldn't have existed previously. It gives you a 10-page report.
Have you got access to my chat history? Yeah, no, I think you're right. I'm determined to avoid your question about behavior, because I'm going to again go back to the cloud one more time. Going back to Cloudflare, I think, because I think they've said they're going to start charging for some. So they want bots or AI agents, whatever, to self-identify what type of activity they're doing. So whether they are scraping or they are doing something else. I can't remember. There was 3 categories. I've forgotten the other 2 now. And I think if it's scraping, they're going to be charged. So I think that's coming in September.
Which makes sense because
It
there's
does.
always been policies against scraping and things like that in the past. Where people don't love you going and scraping their content, but now, there's just these beings that can go and just
do it. Yeah, and I feel it's one of those things where it's like you want it to work in your favor but not against you. So it's like, but I want to be able to do it when I choose to do it, but I do understand why they're clamping down on other people doing it.
I'm doing it for good reasons. Everyone else is doing it for bad reasons. And I'm pretty sure Cloudflare released one of the most powerful site scraping tools at the same time.
One rule is like, do as I say, not as I do. Yeah. I'll answer your question now. I think similarly to what you said around the behavior. Yeah, I think for things like aggregating, if you're looking for something and you want to aggregate information, whether that's product pricing or whether it's just information, you want to pull it from multiple different sources. There's no way you're going to go and physically visit 5, 6, 7 different websites and go through everything on there, go through page after page, which is what you had to do previously. Whereas now that kind of thing is gone. So yeah, anything that's research based, best air fryer, whatever, anything like that. Yeah, there's no way you're going to be going on websites. Even like information that's maybe not, I'd obviously still use Google Maps and you'd still look up like anything real time. But even that, it's getting better, like, because it is using like web retrieval, it is, it's getting better to even get real time information, but I just don't fully trust it on things like that yet. So timetables, anything like that, I'd probably still go to a website for. And I don't know about you, but I'm not purchasing anything. Maybe we can't even. Is that still US only? Or can you purchase things now? Because if you can, I'm not doing that yet. I would still go on, even if I'm trying to find a product. I might do my research through Claude, but then I would end up on a product page and I would buy something on a website.
I think OpenAI shelved it.
Oh,
yeah. I bit more salty news back in the end, but I'm pretty sure OpenAI shelved the purchase journey stuff.
Right.
They had a bit of a cull a little while ago because I think they realized they were getting a bit scattergun, and Anthropic was starting to eat the dinner. Yeah, so I think they've nipped and tucked a bit, and that's one of the things that ended up going. Might be wrong,
but there was a protocol though, and I don't know if that was theirs or Google's. Maybe they both had one. Open Commerce Protocol or something.
Google's still doing it, and it's coupled with like their new AI search engine and be able to add to baskets and buy things. So Google you can still do it with, yeah. And I think that's still evolving and growing.
Is that US only? Do you know?
Probably at the minute, I would guess. Yeah, I think they're rolling out the new Google in US because that's pretty much just AI, isn't it? It's not the traditional thing, and then they're going to roll it out over here.
Because for stuff like that, if it was like, I don't know if they're still a thing, but you could get those Amazon buttons that you put on your washing machine and we press it to order.
Yeah.
New detergent.
They're not anymore, but I used to like them.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's another thing like the mini disc, as a kind of interim technology, like a caretaker manager, But if there was something like, I think the last thing to go for me would be just buying something from some random website. But if I could say to Claude, hey, I need, new light bulbs for the kitchen, and it would know what light bulbs I use in the kitchen, or, I need new, washing detergent. It knows what one I buy and what size I get and whatever. That I would be up for. But like, go and buy me, I don't know that I'd say, go buy me a pair of shoes, randomly. Maybe I would. It might be a bit of jeopardy is nice in life. Just say, buy me a pair of shoes. The left one needs to be the same as the right one. Otherwise, I don't mind.
Yeah, that'd be a nice way to live your life, I think. A bit more variety. But yeah, I think shopping is still not there. I agree. I'm trying to think of categories of internet use now in my head. So like general day-to-day just surfing of the internet for information, that's almost evaporated for me. I tend to get it via an LLM or via a dedicated application on my phone. So like BBC News or Reddit or something like that, just something that I open and I'm in that thing. But I don't visit Reddit or BBC News or any of those kind of things on my desktop. I don't do that. The only time I open up articles really is if it's been surfaced to me in an LLM and I go and give it a scan, or if like for this podcast and stuff, I've got them open just because I want a quick and easy way to reference something. But apart from that, nothing. Shopping for sure. I don't do a massive amount of online shopping. I tend to just use Amazon, to be fair, but I think I still would be the same. I wouldn't necessarily complete that journey yet. Maybe when Google starts to come out with all their stuff, and because they've got like add to your wish list and it can monitor pricing and it can trigger a purchase and like a universal wallet and universal shopping cart and all this stuff on the horizon, right? So I can imagine that being useful if they get it right, but still at the minute that still feels in the domain.
Yeah.
But the journey up to purchase, I think it has changed. Like I wouldn't necessarily. Maybe previously I would have just Googled a product, clicked through a few sites, maybe looked for some reviews, where now it might be like, I'm after this kind of thing, go and find reviews and put together a bit of a report that will then trigger my purchase. So that's changed. Like for this electronics project, for example, I sort of chatted with Claude about what I needed and what components we would need, and then it built me a shopping list of all the different pieces and how they would hook together, and providing me some links with where I could go and purchase it. And then I went and did it. So that's kind of my most recent shopping experience, I guess. And then the other one that springs to mind is application. It is like UI interaction with thinking specifically of work UI. So let's say Google Cloud Platform, GA4, Google Tag Manager, whatever it may be. The MCP has done a pretty big job of starting to reduce down the amount of time that I interact with any UI in that way. I mean, with Google Cloud, it was already quite low anyway, because I used to use the CLI, the Google Cloud CLI, G-Cloud CLI, and interact with Google Cloud that way. But pretty much for everything else, where possible, I interact and retrieve data via an LLM.
Yeah, same. I think, and when you then do have to go back into the UI, it's painful because, firstly, because you're rusty, but secondly, because it is more difficult to get to do what you want because you're clicking around rather than just running commands. And so, yeah, the kind of interface is hard, isn't it? I'm trying to think where it's a bit like whenever we think about this stuff, we always end up, you do end up taking it to the conclusion of all of this will be just taken care of eventually. Because if you think about those things you mentioned, well, actually, two things came to my mind when I was listening to you. So one is that like the phone environment, the kind of mobile environment is safer at the moment because my behavior on my phone has probably changed less, not a lot less, because I'm using Claude for a lot, but I'm still using other apps. Certain other apps I'm using as much as I ever used, but my web behavior has probably changed a lot more. So does that just mean that is it just a simple case that the technology is not there yet? Because if you had integrations with, is everything, and maybe jumping ahead slightly, but with things like WebMCP, if enough companies get on board with that and just expose all of their data, all their information, all their content to agents, I think personally I would happily just use one app for everything if I could. So if I didn't need to go on Reddit, if I didn't need to go on Garmin, if I didn't need to go on Amazon, if I didn't need to go on, well, I already don't need to go on GA4 or BigQuery or whatever. But if you didn't need to go to any website, if you didn't need to go to BBC, if you didn't need to go on Trainline or whatever, then that's got to be better just purely from a usability point of view, because we've got better things to do, don't we, than go and click around websites. So part of me thinks, bring it on, open it all up, make it, have a standard that people adhere to, and make the internet a thing for, well, maybe the internet in that scenario wouldn't exist at all, but there'd just be connections somewhere. It's just a database, yeah. Like, what do we need? Why do we need, especially when there's not, trying to think if there are places where you go where you're getting genuine human creativity, and you're going on to see that on the web. But I think most of my use of the web is either information or purchasing or doing some kind of transaction. So not necessarily just a financial transaction, but some kind of, I'm going to get a thing or I'm going to change a thing. And I don't know. It's not like it's a place you go for cultural enrichment or for kind of creative inspiration. At least I don't find it that, because no, we don't. No, no.
There are generations where they're probably, this is going to make me a very old man now, but there's generations where their culture is very much tied up in
TikTok or whatever.
Yeah, but again, they're more application type things rather than anything else. It's just short form content, and I don't know. But yeah, I agree. That's not where it's not really where there's no real recreation tied up in the internet for me.
Same, yeah. Okay, indirectly. So you might watch stuff on Netflix, but then that's still an app rather than, it's not really the web as such. So then it makes me think then, because I think part of the problem, the whole dead internet thing, part of the problem is it's trying to serve two very different audiences at the same time. It's trying to serve humans and it's trying to serve agents or bots. And you can't, maybe there isn't a way to serve them both equally. So is the answer going, full nuclear mode? Is it just, make the internet a database and just have connections? And you agree? Another thumbs up there from you. Another emoji thumbs up. You're gonna have to start wearing mitts with your fingerless mitts or something to. I just wonder whether whether we'd all be better off if the effort went into exposing all the data and all the content in an agent-ready way. Stopped trying to hedge the bets and make things human friendly as well, because it's just going to be the whole SEO thing all over again. You're going to be going on websites. It's going to be the equivalent of like keyword stuffing. You're going to be going on trying to read something and just be like, this is not written for me. This is written for an agent.
Yeah. There's a random list halfway down that breaks the content down. I mean, it's already happening, right? It's already happening.
Yeah. So maybe like if we're not with when that happened before with SEO, it was frustrating because there was no alternative. As a human, you were frustrated because you were reading this like content that was clearly written to game Google and get that site up the listings. Whereas now there is a plausible alternative, which is that you just don't consume content in that way anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's things. I guess it's like the outside world to a certain extent, where there's so much existing infrastructure, like with robotics. So the robotics has to trying to make humanoid robots so that they can exist and walk around and sort of fit into a world that is primarily been designed and created for humans. In a way, it's the same for LLMs on the internet, because the internet has been designed to be interfaced with, in a lot of cases, human beings. They sort of look at something and have the UI layout is based around like how they can click around and how they can absorb information. Whereas, like you say, that's just not necessarily in an ideal world. They would just go and pass through some vector database of information and retrieve X and pass the information back. I mean, Claude Coworks just released to that end, an ability to record yourself moving around a site to create a skill. So I've seen some examples where somebody wants to do bike trails and there's a particular site they use, but there's no API, there's no MCP, they can't access it in that way. So it took it through like going in, working the filters, looking at the right trails, checking the stars, downloading them, putting them in a folder. And it kind of created a specific skill for it to interact with that human interface. And that's the thing, like we joked about Rabbit R1 before. That was the big promise of that Rabbit R1, was it was going to be an AI based on top of human interfaces. So it wasn't based on APIs. It wouldn't break when an API changed. It would just be able to interact and use a site and retrieve information. It was a lot of bollocks. It didn't do
As it
that.
turned out, yeah. But would this new Claude Has it got a name? Just like record a skill or something was the.
I think it's literally,
because it is just a skill, so it's just a sub feature of skills, I guess, or a way of. I don't know if there's a name for the overall thing of recording. But sorry, anyway, what I was going to ask was, you said about it doesn't matter if an API breaks, but surely if the UI of the website changes, then the skill's not going to work anymore. Or is it smart enough to could it look for an equivalent? So say one of the steps in the skill is click on the export button and they change the export button to say download instead. Would it adapt to that?
Well, that was again. That's kind of what the promise of the R1 was, or the model that they pretended they had. Is that because these things can reason, then they can reason through changes. And if you train a model specifically to interact, the model is like really good at. It's what computer use is about as well, right? And the browser use. They're trying to make them just be really good at figuring out and navigating through our current existing architecture. So you'd hope that they would be able to reason. I mean, I don't know to speak to the specific feature that they've released, if that's a baked-in feature, but it's not. It doesn't seem out of the realms of possibility for it to adapt and change as you go.
No, it doesn't. And how do you know? I know it's new, and I know you did say you haven't played around with it too much, but does it? How does it then go and act on that? Is it using the browser tool within? So is it opening up a tab within your browser, or is it?
I don't know, because
Yeah,
I assume so, actually, because they have just released a browser for
in
Code Desktop.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's available in co-work. I think these skill builds are in co-work, as far as I'm aware. So I'd assume it's opening up your Chrome browser using the app that using the.
Because one of the obvious use for it is something that's really repetitive and you need to do a lot of times, like where, as you said, where there isn't an API and you have to, like, I think of like Garmin as a good example. So Garmin only has a developer API, so you can't get your training activities out of it, but you can do it through, there's other ways you can do it, but directly from Garmin you can't get it. But you can go in and manually download the things that you want, but you're not going to want to have to do that like hundreds of times or whatever. But with these, like, I don't know if this is just the skill part or if they're actually improving the automated use of your browser as well. Because if you try and do something, I've even done it with the podcast where you're trying to get it to read all the titles before and all the excerpts and pull all the transcripts. I've tried to do that, and sometimes it falls over because it's timing out or it's hitting an issue or there's some JavaScript rendering issue on the site or something. So it's still, it almost feels like it's not really new technology, is it? It's something that's been around for a long time and is still as clunky. Maybe it's slightly less clunky, but it still doesn't really feel like the best way of doing something like that.
No, and I think there's going to be models that are specific. I mean, I think we said last week that there's a lot of the models are confusing, but they're starting to sort of, perhaps you'd use this for computer use because it's been trained and sort of honed a little bit more on computer use and browser use, and this one for agentic work because that's what it's really been post-trained on. So I do wonder if it does seem to be a focus for them to try and create models that can do this stuff and can interact and surf around quicker and more effectively. I just don't know if it's going to just be a general. I don't know. I think ultimately it makes sense, like we say, that more and more things move into LLMs, especially if the experience gets richer. Like one criticism you could level at LLMs is it's very, I mean, certainly mine, they're more in dark mode. It's just like a black and white interface, but they've started to layer in things like dynamic images being created, and obviously OpenAI in the US has like apps inside of. So you can imagine that sort of dynamism sort of beginning to appear in the LLMs and making the experience nicer and a bit more something you'd want to interact with. And on the mobile, I know this was a little while back we were talking about this on this podcast, but in terms of sentences, but on the mobile front, one point on that, so I've got an iPhone and it just recently, I've updated it to the latest version of iPhone with the new Siri, which is the one they've worked with Google on. And what it does, interestingly, it sort of indexes all of the local information it has on local apps like calendar, Gmail, photos, notes, pretty much all of this information that you might have on your phone, and it can now access and retrieve that information and answer questions. So previously Siri was pretty crap, notoriously so, but it is significantly better. And I have found myself a couple of times just my phone has been sat down and I've just said, Siri, what's on my calendar today? Or can you find one of the interesting ones? Like I was needing to find like some information about my mortgage. And I just said like, what's my mortgage account number? And it'd been like 2 years since I'd last received an email or something from it. And it had indexed my Gmail. It went back, found the information, returned it to me, showed me the email. So I can see that they're starting on mobiles to sort of get an overview of everything that's on your phone. And apparently Apple are opening that up to app developers. So other app developers can surface this information to Siri as well. So then it'd be able to look inside of all these applications. So I can imagine my app usage dropping a little bit on phone even because of that kind of technology. And Gemini is similar on Google, I assume. The only difference with Gemini, as far as I'm aware, is it's all cloud-based, whereas Apple's pushing much more at local level stuff.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, I agree. And I think like what the point I made earlier about saying that like on phones, my behavior changed less, that wasn't because of any desire on my part. That's just because the tech isn't there yet. But I think if you could do that on phones, then I would reduce down the number of apps. So, I mean, look, at the end of the day, like you don't want to be having to navigate different apps or websites if you don't have to. You're dealing with the changes that they're making all the time. You're dealing with the differences between, like even if things like multiple banking apps, you're trying to remember, hang on Monzo, how do I do this? Because I'm usually using Revolut and it's different. All of that will go away. And if all that was just pulled into one place, you just have one interface to get really, really good at using. And then you don't really need to worry about any of the rest of it. So yeah, I'm all for that. Something to talk, kind of slightly separate, well, very related, but so regardless of which way, let's say the internet dies and it's replaced by just this kind of database of product feeds and content feeds or whatever, and people just use LLMs to connect to that. Regardless of what happens to the web as we know it, there's an underlying question, which is what happens to the quality of the content if the training starts increasingly using AI. It's the whole snake eating its tail type thing. If the training models have already used everything that's on the internet, then is that going to degrade further and further? Is it on a declining slope where the quality of the models is going to get worse and worse because it's going to be ingesting more and more AI generated content?
Yes. Well, I don't know.
That was a simple answer to a long question.
There's something. I saw a video ages ago by there's this YouTube channel called this is a German word, Kurzgesagt, which is German for in a nutshell. But they do these little scientific videos that describe like a particular subject, but they go in depth on it and they really do a lot of research around it. And they released a video on about AI, and it talked about the fact that when they originally saw like this stuff come out and the deep research and stuff, they were like, this is going to save us so much time, because they spend hours and hours and hours and multiple researchers delving in to find the information and put together the knowledge base that they then build the scripts on top of, and they could just push a deep research agent to go and find it. So they did it, and then they found that it produced a lot of data, great, and then they started looking into the sort of cross-reference what it produced back, got rid of a load because it was AI. It was either some of it was hallucinated and didn't exist. This was a while ago. Some of it was clearly like an AI article. And then they had, I don't know, I think they said about 60% that was left behind that was usable.
Yeah.
Then they went further and started to dig into the sources of the ones that were left behind. And ultimately they found that if they kept going down the rabbit hole, the source, when they got to the bottom of the source, it was from a place they didn't understand, or where the information had come from, completely unsourced information, which they assumed, and probably rightly assumed, was AI. So even there's this phenomenon happening where you've got some piece of information out there, someone referencing it into a stack, so then they end up the top of that stack looks reputable because it's got loads of references of all these other sources. but if you dig down deep enough, it's a lot of crap. And so they basically had to abandon the whole idea, because it took them more time to delve in and actually prove out that this information was true than it was just to do the research themselves. And nobody's that rigorous.
No.
Nobody's that rigorous in there. Talk about critical thinking. Like, I have stuff to do in a day. I have to use my judgment.
Yeah.
But I can't right. Well, let's keep going. What you doing? I asked you to check what the price of that application was. I'm on my 17th
Yeah.
source.
Is there a positive view, or is that just an inevitability? Because obviously, for OpenAI and Anthropic and Google, I mean, Google have built their entire reputation on, well, at least trying to deal with quality and make sure quality content is put in front of people. So it's not like Anthropic and OpenAI and Google are just going to walk into this blind. They're obviously aware of this potential risk, but I just wonder how, like, it's a big tidal wave to kind of fight against, isn't it? Because because of the exponential power of AI, like the ability for people to churn out content and publish it now and have source material that looks genuine, and it's going to become quite an epic battle to try and differentiate between something that's been, well, it's not like, and we should be clear that something AI generated doesn't necessarily mean it's false or it's not, it's not reliable, but maybe it's a subcategory of AI generated content which is dubious or hasn't been, sourced properly or whatever. But it's hard. I guess as mere mortals, maybe we're just not close enough to what the big companies are doing around this. But how are they ensuring that they're training data? Because presumably every time they run a brand new, when they're training a brand new model, they must be grabbing anything that exists now that wasn't there the prior time. So what kind of filtering are they doing to make sure that they're not just feeding in more and more garbage?
I think in a lot of cases now they use synthetic data as well, because they've pretty much consumed
all of the actual, yeah.
So, but they have to be doing something. You're right, and to be fair, like, the hallucinations and the amount of misinformation I get fed has reduced dramatically over the past sort of year or so.
Or so you think.
Or so I think, yeah. As far as my critical thinking can go.
Yeah, it's just getting better at convincing you.
Yeah, but it's always been it's always been the case. But like with anything with AI, it just highlights and exacerbates and speeds up the problem. Like, there's always been misinformation, for example. Like, even if you think around Brexit, there was all that Russian interference and misinformation there. That was pre, and the first Trump presidency. There's all that going on, but that pre-existed these LLMs being in the world. But now, and we're talking, there's articles out there that aren't quite true, or this, that, the other. But there's a whole other side of social media being filled with echo chambers, stuffed to the brim with complete nonsense articles that people believe, and ultimately has societal impacts outside of the internet, where people just are at odds with each other and polarized and fighting, and that's just sort of feels like it's being turned up to 11 with AI. And then let's not even get, well, maybe let's get started. But this before we even start talking about video and how far that's coming. Like, we used to talk quite a lot about video. We haven't for a while, but I've been watching some stuff recently that people have put together movie trailers and things like that. That's just, I can't tell if it's real or not.
Yeah. There's another way to think about it, and it's, I guess, like with everything, like, you're right, that existed before, and it's easy to get caught up in how things are going to be worse now because of some new thing and it's going to make everything worse. But actually, the problems aren't new problems; they're just maybe amplified in certain ways. But there could be a flip side to it as well. So, this idea that, like, a bit like, so when Google, when search engines became a thing and then Google became the dominant one, presenting all the world's information in the way that they did, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you can access anything, you can search for anything, but maybe on the drawback, people maybe argue then that it impacted critical thinking because you didn't know what you were, you have to know what you're looking for, and maybe instead of in the previously where people would have gone and researched a topic deeply, you just kind of created this more scattergun approach to, picking bits of information here and there. And this is probably no different again now. It's just an evolution of that. But the positive side, and which was the same with Google and other search engines, is putting information that people previously didn't have access to in front of them. So even things like academic papers, if you're trying to check something, let's say you're like, I'm wondering whether I should take a multivitamin or not. You can go to your AI and say, tell me what the current scientific literature says. Check the quality of the studies. Check they're not run by commercial, they weren't funded by commercial companies selling this product. As a layperson, like, back to your point earlier when you said, you've got things to do. Like, nobody has time or the ability to go through and read 20 scientific papers, but you can do that now with Claude. So there's pluses and minuses. On the one hand, maybe there is going to be an increase in the bad kind of AI generated content, or it's going to be harder to separate truth from fiction, whatever. But there's also an increase in your ability to critically think, to check things more thoroughly, to fact check if you're willing to do it. So I don't know. It's hard to know which will weigh heavier on the scales. It's hard to know.
If you think about it, it is a natural evolution of, like you say. So if we go really far back, you've got the only way of disseminating and communicating information was the spoken word, like just being able to sort of, oral histories and oral things being passed down. Then you get the written word, but even then, there's very few people can actually read and consume it. It's very difficult to reproduce the works, and mistakes are being introduced. And then ultimately, education starts to spread that out further. But you still got to go, and you got to consume it. You got to go read a book or whatever. Like you say, Google comes along, starts to sort of catalog everything. People can find that information much easier. And to this point now, where you have graduate level researchers at your fingertips to look at whatever. We joked before, but if you wanted a 20-page report on air fryers, you could have it, which is a ridiculous thing to even think about historically. And you can imagine it moving further to a point where the information is just there. You just have it. It's, all these neural link stuff that's beginning to appear. Just when you want a piece of information, it is in your brain and available to you. That's the kind of natural point. It's just reducing down the latency at which you can consume information. But I suppose the point and problem of this particular part of the conversation is how you make that clean, how you make that not be rubbish. And you can imagine like we'd almost trust in. We have to trust in corporations. If Google and OpenAI and Anthropic put in measures to make sure that what comes out of it is moral and aligned and things like that, then you can trust the information you're getting out of it. But you've got people like Grok, where he's intentionally tweaking and changing things he doesn't like to fit his narrative. That's very dangerous when it's just producing information and being able to put stuff out there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a big topic, isn't it? I was like, when you went all the way back to when we could just communicate through speaking to each other. It's like it's not like the problem didn't exist then. I mean, that was like misinformation or even just unintentional, like passing through multiple different people, and the story gets watered down or changed or tweaked. So it isn't really and then history books, you could they differ depending on which country you read them in.
Yeah, the victor or the
yeah. So it's not. It's yes. All these improvements in technology, they maybe amplify the risk, but they also do amplify the opportunity. And it's probably not. No matter what, it's probably not going to go away. Like there isn't. The Grok example, like it's no different to like it's propaganda in a way, isn't it? And it's if someone has a platform, they can use that for good or bad. And people have had platforms in the past, pre-AI, pre-internet. It's a human, I guess, getting very philosophical here, but it's a human problem, isn't it? It's not a technology problem as such. Obviously, the technology has to account for this and try to filter and try to verify. But the problem fundamentally is a human one, isn't it, rather than a technological problem?
Yeah, and we've always adapted societally in the past to new challenges. I guess the main difference, the worrying thing here is the pace at which the change is occurring. Can society and governments and people keep up if the pace of which things change is so rapid that it's hard to get your head around what the hell's just happened? It's got to be imagined. It's hard for. I always think about my grandma. Before she died, she was like around when the plane was invented and when the iPhone was invented, and all of the pieces of technology that happened between that. I can't imagine she'd be able to keep up with this and understand that piece of information wasn't created by a human. It was created by a computer. And when you see a video telling her, I need you to send me £6,000. This could be my grandma, or it could be you, of course.
That's true, yeah.
Scams. But yeah, I don't think I could sit down and explain that to her in a million years. I don't think she'd get it. It just wouldn't. It's too quick. It's changed too fast for her to grab that concept.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a tangent, but you've made a little joke there about being scammed. That was from a real thing that I told you, which is that a hotel I
in confidence.
Yeah, in confidence. So now I'll just talk about it on air. It's an even scarier, darker side. It's one thing if you read something and you're not really sure if it's true or not. And obviously that could be very harmful as well if it's manipulating people. But in terms of scamming and phishing and hacking, this is the other side as well, isn't it? It's like the more capable the AI gets, the harder it's getting for security to be preserved and maintained. It's how legitimate you can make something look, because everybody can spin up a website, you can spin up an app in no time. What they did was they hacked into this hotel's account. So they got all of the information about all of the bookings. So they were able to present me with a really legitimate looking web form that said, we need you to confirm your details, which is not an unusual thing for hotels to do before you go and stay at them. And it had my booking dates and it had a picture of the room and it had everything. So it looked really legitimate. So it's not just about information, is it? It's also about your trust of actually booking things, buying things online. Bye-bye to the internet. Is that what we're...
Yeah.
The internet won't exist. Yeah. It's been fun. Okay, let's leave it there. That's it for this week's episode of The Measure Pod. We hope you enjoyed it and picked up something useful along the way. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on so you don't miss future episodes.
And if you're enjoying the show, we'd really appreciate it if you left us a quick review. It really helps more people discover the pod and keeps us motivated to bring back more. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.